Hey, deep divers. You ready to dive into another week of crypto chaos with me?
Always ready to jump in the deep end. Let's do it.
This week, Bitcoin's pushing towards $70,000 again. Memecoins are going wild thanks to Yuga Labs. And Michael Saylor, well, he's been dropping some interesting Bitcoin wisdom as usual.
It's been one of those weeks where you just got to scratch your head and wonder which way the market's going to bounce next, you know?
Speaking of head scratching, Saylor's been busy comparing Bitcoin to just about everything under the sun. Steel, electricity, you name it. You think he's just trying to get people talking, or is there something more to it?
Well, he's never been one to shy away from the spotlight, that's for sure. But I think there's a method to his eccentricity. When he makes these comparisons, he's trying to make a point about Bitcoin being the foundation of a completely new financial system.
Right, like how steel or electricity kind of revolutionized their respective industries.
Exactly. He believes Bitcoin can do the same thing for money itself.
Okay, I get that. But then he goes and says he's going to leave his whole Bitcoin fortune to humanity, even invoking Satoshi Nakamoto. Is that just a publicity stunt, or do you think he's serious about the philanthropy angle?
It's definitely a bold statement, and the timing is kind of interesting, right? With all the renewed buzz about who Satoshi really was and where all their Bitcoin went, it's almost like he's trying to present himself as the guardian of Bitcoin's legacy.
Saylor as a modern-day Satoshi. That's an interesting take, but it seems like not everyone is on board with his vision, right? Didn't he catch some flack for calling people who are all about self-custody paranoid crypto-anarchists?
Yeah, that definitely ruffled some feathers in the crypto community. Saylor's a big believer in institutional adoption, you see. He thinks getting the big players like BlackRock and Fidelity on board is the key to Bitcoin's success.
Makes sense,
But a lot of Bitcoin enthusiasts, they believe the whole point of Bitcoin is decentralization. And that means self-custody, holding your own Bitcoin without relying on any third parties.
And Saylor's saying that self-custody is what's keeping Bitcoin from really taking off.
Exactly. He argues that going with established institutions makes things more secure and familiar, which would then attract more everyday investors.
But does that mean compromising what Bitcoin is all about?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
And Saylor's putting his money where his mouth is. MicroStrategy's making moves to become like a Bitcoin bank with Bitcoin-backed securities and everything. They even have a goal of hitting $1 trillion valuation. That's pretty ambitious.
To say the least. It's a high-risk, high-reward game, and only time will tell if it pays off for them. But it shows how much Saylor really believes in Bitcoin's potential.
And he's not alone. Over $2 billion flowed into Bitcoin ETFs just last week. Looks like institutional interest is definitely heating up.
No doubt. And with the U.S. election getting closer, there's a lot of uncertainty in the air, but also a lot of potential opportunities, depending on how the whole regulatory landscape shifts.
Speaking of uncertainty, meme coins have been anything but boring. Apechain just launched from Yuga Labs, the team behind the Bored Ape Yacht Club, and it seems like the entire meme coin market went into a frenzy.
It's been wild. Their APE governance token shot up almost 120%, and all these other meme coins like Bored and Curtis just rode the wave. Talk about volatility.
It's a wild ride for sure.
Huh.
But it's not all billion-dollar companies and meme coins in the crypto world. There was also the Scroll airdrop that didn't quite go as planned.
Oh, yeah, that was a tough one. It's a good example of why you got to be careful chasing airdrops.
How so?
Well, before the snapshot for their SCR token, Scroll's total value lock, or TVL, basically the total assets locked on their platform, went through the roof. Everyone was trying to get in on that airdrop action.
Hoping to make a quick buck.
Exactly. But once they took the snapshot, a lot of those short-term players pulled their funds out and the TVL crashed. Like $170 million.
Ouch.
Makes you think twice about these projects that rely so heavily on airdrops to get people interested, you know?
It's definitely a good reminder that not everything that shines is gold, especially in the crypto world. But hey, while some projects are struggling, others are making big moves. Like Ethereum, they're pushing forward with those scaling solutions. I read something about a Pectra fork. What's that all about?
The Pectra fork. Big news for Ethereum's Layer 2 scaling. It introduces something called dynamic blob fees, which are meant to make those annoying gas fees more predictable.
And hopefully cheaper too.
Exactly. Cheaper and more affordable, especially for Layer 2 solutions built on Ethereum.
So basically, an upgrade to make Ethereum more efficient and user-friendly.
Exactly. High gas fees have been a problem for Ethereum. Innovations like this Pectra fork are going to be essential moving forward.
Makes sense, especially with all these other platforms popping up. And speaking of innovation, what's Chainlink been up to with this whole cross-chain interoperability thing? I think it's called CCIP.
That's right, CCIP, or the Cross-Chain Interoperability Protocol. It's creating connections between different blockchains.
So they're building bridges instead of walls. I like it.
Exactly. Right now, most blockchains are like their own little islands, right? But CCIP allows tokens and data to move between them smoothly and securely.
So instead of isolated islands, it's more like a connected network. But what does that actually look like in practice?
Okay, imagine being able to move your crypto assets between Ethereum, Solana, Avalanche, any of them, without any hassle. No more jumping through hoops. That's what CCIP is trying to do.
It sounds like a game changer for developers and everyday users. And it's not just talk, right? Didn't ANZ Bank use CCIP for cross-border payments?
You're right. ANZ Bank is testing it out as part of Project Guardian, which is run by the Monetary Authority of Singapore. Traditional finance is starting to see the potential of blockchain.
It's everywhere these days. It's hard to keep up with, even for us. But even with all this progress, we can't forget about the risks. There was that Tapioca DAO exploit recently.
Yeah, that was unfortunate. They lost $4.4 million, although they were able to recover a good chunk of it. It just goes to show that security is still a major issue.
A good reminder that we need to be careful out there.
Absolutely. And it's not just DeFi protocols that are at risk. We saw Radiant Capital, which is a lending platform, get hit with a $50 million hack. It's a constant back and forth.
A never-ending game of cat and mouse. And speaking of high stakes, Bitcoin's hash rate has been all over the news lately. It just hit an all-time high, right?
You got it. Over 769 EHs. That's a whole lot of computing power backing up the Bitcoin network.
For our listeners who might not be familiar with hash rate, can you break down why it's so important?
In simple terms, the hash rate is what keeps Bitcoin secure. It represents the combined computing power of all the miners out there who are validating transactions and adding blocks to the blockchain. The higher the hash rate, the more secure the network is.
So this new all-time high is good news for Bitcoin.
Definitely. It shows how strong and resilient the Bitcoin network is, especially with all the regulatory scrutiny and market ups and downs. It means that despite the challenges, Bitcoin and the people behind it are still going strong.
It's like Bitcoin just powers through no matter what's going on in the world. Speaking of the world, the regulatory side of things is still a bit of a roller coaster, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's a really interesting time, honestly. You've got institutions like that UK pension fund, L&G. They're embracing tokenization, putting their assets right there on the blockchain.
It's pretty forward thinking.
Right. But then at the same time, you've got people like Neil Kashkari over at the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis. He's saying Bitcoin should be taxed heavily or even banned completely.
It's like they're speaking two different languages.
Yeah.
So where does that leave us? Is crypto regulation moving towards acceptance, or are we heading towards a crackdown?
You know, it's tough to say right now. The crypto world keeps throwing curveballs at regulators, but whatever they decide is going to be huge for how the industry evolves. We definitely need to keep a close eye on that.
For sure. Speaking of keeping an eye on things, what's going on with Japan? Haven't they been making some crypto-friendly moves lately?
Yeah. The leader of the Democratic Party for the People, Yuichiro Tamaki, he's talking about slashing crypto taxes down to 20% if they win the election.
Wow.
They want to attract more crypto businesses and investors to Japan. It's a bold strategy.
It's like everyone wants a piece of the crypto pie, but not everyone's willing to share.
That's a good way to put it. It's a real global tug-of-war playing out. Some countries are laying out the welcome mat, others are building walls. It'll be interesting to see who comes out on top.
One thing's for sure. No matter what governments or institutions try to do, Bitcoin seems to just keep on going. It's like it doesn't even notice borders or politics.
Exactly. That's the power of decentralization, right? At its heart, Bitcoin is all about giving individuals control and creating a financial system that operates outside the traditional power structures.
It's a powerful concept. And speaking of putting your money where your mouth is, El Salvador is still all in on Bitcoin, adding to their national treasury every single day.
It's a bold experiment. Only time will tell if it pays off, but it shows a lot of faith in Bitcoin's potential.
It's definitely a fascinating time to be following all of this. Any final thoughts for our deep divers before we wrap things up?
Just this. Keep that curiosity alive. Stay informed. And never stop asking questions. The crypto world thrives on that kind of energy.
Words to deep dive by. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive into the world of crypto. Until next time, keep exploring and invest wisely.